You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. CJAD 800.
Welcome back. I think I may have inadvertently said the 5-year anniversary of the mosque shooting in Quebec City was Sunday. It was Saturday, and I remember well. I was sitting at home and got a call from our program director explaining what had happened, and then got in a car and drove down to Quebec City. The thing that stunned me, I think, the most when I arrived was the silence right around the mosque. People there just basically who were there watching in stunned silence what had just happened. It was a tragic event, and here we are now. Hard to believe 5 years later. It is the first National Day of Action against Islamophobia. So what's happened? What's changed in those 5 years since the attack? Let's try to make some head or maybe some sense of an event that thankfully we don't have to deal with or haven't had to deal with since then. But Fareed Khan is founder of Canadians United Against Hate. He's on the line right now. Fareed, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So that's kind of, I realize, a general question to start with in terms of, okay, it's 5 years later, what's happened, but where are we now on this?
Well, we've got this national designation of a National Day of Remembrance and a National Day of Action, which is great, but one of the things that the Muslim community is wondering is why it took as long as it did, because they started asking for this official designation later in 2017 after the shooting had happened. However, where we are sort of nationally is that we have seen a rise in Islamophobia since 2017. And in the 5 years since then, we've had more Muslims killed in acts of hate than in all G7 countries combined. Think about that. We had another incident in September 2020 outside a mosque in Toronto where someone was stabbed to death by a neo-Nazi. And then we had the Afzal family in London last June who were run over by a white supremacist in a pickup truck. So Muslims have targets on their backs, and that's where we are 5 years later.
How fragile is the community feeling? Like, I'm thinking back to 5 years ago and how it absolutely, obviously rocked the Muslim community. It rocked the entire country. So yeah. I'm wondering if you're feeling supported by the country, and I'm just wondering how the community is rallying and feeling these days.
I believe that there is a sense that Canadians are more aware about hate against Muslims. Certainly, if you consider the people who turned out after the London incident across the country in the thousands, same way that they turned out in very cold weather 5 years ago after the mosque shooting, there is a sense that there is a greater understanding. However, there's a dichotomy, because commensurate with this greater understanding within Canada about hate directed at Muslims, there's also been a rise in hate and white supremacists targeting Muslims, both online and in the real world. And what we need is actions beyond symbolic actions, beyond thoughts and prayers, by the federal government, which is one of the things we've been calling for, is a national coordinated strategy to tackle hate led by the government and working with the provincial government, so that part of it would be a public education component, but part of it would also be legal components to make illegal these hate groups that have been cropping up across the country.
You know, you mentioned, and I guess you started with this, saying, why has it taken 5 years? And I know at the time, I think it might almost be fair to say everyone was caught so off guard by this. I remember watching Régis Lebon, the mayor of Quebec City, reacting to this, thinking that something like this could never happen in his city. And I think a lot of us reacted the same way, that nothing like that could happen in Canada. What's been the obstacle in getting something done since then? Because it seems, from having it brought up so many years ago, it wouldn't have taken until now to even create this first National Day against Islamophobia. You have an idea of what those actual problems were, if there were problems? What were they?
Well, I think at the federal level, I think the Liberals have become complacent because they're pretty much guaranteed a vast majority of the Muslim vote. So, for the several years after the shooting, Muslim leaders would be calling on the government to take action, and the government would listen politely, and then they felt, well, who else are the Muslims vote for? And the thing is that with the Conservatives, unfortunately, they've had elements within their caucus and within their party who have promoted Islamophobia. So Muslims aren't going to vote for them. So basically, who do you vote for? I think that's one thing at the national level. And then at the provincial level, you have situations like what's happening right now with Bill 21 in Quebec. I caught the tail end of your conversation before the break, and the fact is that the fact that you've got a law in this country by a government that specifically targets racialized religious minorities. And by the way, if anyone is thinking this doesn't target only Muslims, or it wasn't meant to target Muslims, I would beg to differ, because there was a poll done in June 2019, just before the Bill 21 was passed, which said that Bill 21 was founded on anti-Muslim prejudice. When you have those sorts of situations with politicians like Mr. Legault saying there's no Islamophobia problem in Quebec, there's no systemic racism problem in Quebec, and you have other premiers across the country who are quick to try and curry public favor by making sympathetic statements, but when they're asked to actually take real action, they don't, then you've got a very serious problem in this country. And Canadians at large need to basically say, no, if you're going to make statements like that, if you want to actually be honest with yourself, then you got to take action. We don't want any more of these thoughts and prayers type statements.
I was just going to simply ask, well, give me an idea of what it is you would like to see happen. What's something the government could do, something, actual in terms of policy?
Well, in terms of policy, I just referenced it, a national coordinated campaign strategy to fight hate in Canada. We include as mandatory curriculum in high schools a core subject that looks at issues of racism and hate in Canada, across the country, in our history, and also in other parts of the world, and what happened in places like what's happening in Myanmar, and what happened in Europe during World War II with the Nazis and so forth, so that this is not something that people have to go out and learn on their own. They learn about it from the very beginning. A public education campaign that would be through social media, TV, and radio, that looks at issues of hate and basically tries to encourage people to fight hate. Banning some of these racist groups, which in some ways are terrorist groups, making them illegal, and also making the use of symbols which are associated with hate, as Germany has done, banning their use and making it criminal to use them in hateful messaging.
Mr. Khan, I thank you very much. You make some excellent points, and I very much appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me.
You bet. Fareed Khan, Canadians United Against Hate, on the 5th anniversary this weekend of the Quebec City Mosque attacks, shootings. We're going to take our break. News is coming up next. Stay with us.